Hello watch enthusiasts and welcome to Watch Chronicler. Today I'm in Lucerne to speak with Chronoswiss CEO and owner Oliver Ebstein about the direction of the company and also to highlight what I believe to be a thoroughly refreshing take on horology. Now those who are regular watchers of this channel will know that I have a very good relationship with Chronoswiss, who have always shown surprising openness and honesty when demonstrating the inner workings of their watches and have really allowed me to delve into their watchmaking process. And considering the Swiss watch industry and the way it can often appear very insular and opaque, this is extremely refreshing. Of course, last year I visited Chronoswiss and was inspired to make a video, but today I'd like to present the personal side of this brand. As many know, I also currently even enjoy the pleasure of owning one of their older pieces, which was produced by the older management of the brand, but still gives the same feeling as their current watches, which is really why I find this brand so inspiring. Before we begin, I should perhaps explain why I find that this brand represents far more than first meets the eye. Founded in 1983 by Gerd Rüdiger Lang, Chronoswiss was created to revive the mechanical watch industry, and so you could view it as a brother, if you will, to the Jean-Claude Biver approach of trying to restore the watch industry after the quartz crisis. They spent the following decades creating guilloche-dialed watches in a very classic Swiss style despite originally being a German brand, but using the name to convey the fact that they were following the Swiss tradition. They also produced skeletonized watches at reasonable prices by using new techniques to allow a greater audience to enjoy this classic watchmaking, very much in the spirit of trying to allow more people to enjoy this side of watches and thus restore it to the fore of the industry. And the Regulator, a design which moved the functions of timekeeping apart on the dial to separate subdials, and which was inspired by the clocks used to regulate watches in the past, was adopted by the brand in 1987 and has remained a key aspect of their approach. However, this task completed, Chronoswiss passed the ownership of the Ebstein family in 2012, and joined by the creative direction of Mike Panzera in 2013, is now setting course for a very new interpretation of their style, which is much bolder than seen before, as you will have noticed from the bright colours, and also the very experimental look with the front of their watches, in a very playful design which I think is very refreshing. But without any further ado, I give you Oliver Ebstein.
You might remember in the beginning when we took over, we said I always loved Chronoswiss because of its design aspects, etc. So we never wanted to change it completely. It was always the question of an evolution and not of a revolution. And I think when we look back today, we very much achieved this goal. So we have the important DNA of Chronoswiss still in the watches, but we have added additional parts, or we have taken it to the next level. But I'm very proud when you look back and you put the watches of the last 30 years together, they all fit together because they have the same angles. They have this, of course, the onion crown. The handicraft aspects are there as it was in the past with the guilloche, with the enamel, etc. So yes, we've taken it to a next level, but keeping the DNA strictly where it belongs to.
And so you think this has continued with the tradition of watchmaking, which was very key to the original ideas of the brand over 30 years ago, in terms of just bringing it into a new age. That still exists behind the brand, it's just that the approach is new.
It's a nice way to put it, yes. I think you need to stay tuned to the basics and to what you're known for and what you're good in. And handicraft always and watchmaking has been a big part in Chronoswiss. So there's a lot of things we do in-house, we do ourselves, in particular talking about the dial, the design, the constructions. So all these very elementary watchmaking issues are taken care of within our house.
So it's all brought under a single umbrella of the brand for the past and the future. But speaking of the future development, of course, with these resec models released, the design has changed somewhat. We see these triangular hands, this perhaps, as was described earlier, technical approach to watches, which is modern. How do you see the brand progressing in the next few years in terms of design, speaking specifically about the design, which I think is a very key part to these watches?
Exactly the way we have already taken. It will be continued. As you say, I think the next level, as I described before, was putting some more depth into the dials, using new techniques and mixing old techniques, handicrafts like the guilloche, like the enamel, but with new possibilities such as the DLC casing, such as the Superluminova. So we always have been well known for innovative ideas, designs, and I think that's just the next century now we are approaching. So the DNA and the idea behind the watchmaking stayed the same as it was 35 years ago, but we have new possibilities, and we take them into account and try to make the best out of it, mixing old and new.
The most recent model to play with timekeeping is the Flying Regulator Open Gear Resec. Released earlier this year, the Resec incarnation of the Chronoswiss regulator is a development of their division of time across these different sections of the dial, which on this watch also lifted off the base of the dial itself to present a more vivid and perhaps more playful depiction of the time. In the case of these new models, the seconds are now displayed with a 30-second hand which jumps back to zero in a linear and non-circular way via a module added to the base movement, which is a high-grade ETA 2892. The result is a very playful interpretation of a timepiece, but with a curious complication without the expense and the maintenance of a bespoke movement, but instead a movement which can be easily serviced and will be serviceable for many years to come as well. With that being said, this is by no means an easy feat to produce, on account of the lightness needed for the second hand to function, as it has to jump across a significant amount of dial in just a split second to restart its 30-second run. And so this year we've also seen a big development with the DLC technology. There's been a lot of talk of these blue cases. Do you see that progressing as a new possibility for the brand in terms of these bright colours, not just applying to the dial, but also to the rest of the watch? Or is it something which you want to keep as a special touch now and then?
No, I think it's part of Chronoswiss. It's being different. It's about giving a bit more of a color into watchmaking. But as you see, we have models. This one, for example, here, which is our Resec in gold with the grey guilloche, is a very classic look.
Yes.
And the same one, as you just mentioned, you've seen in production today, is the blue DLC, which is a completely different look. So this means in the same line of watches, you can have different references looking quite different. So the idea is to have a broad range, but with a clear focus on our design.
Since the mid-2000s, Chronoswiss has been no stranger to brightly coloured case coatings on small areas of the watches such as pushers or small external components, which were coated blue. However, we've only seen the most extreme and, to my knowledge, unique demonstration of this on their fully blue version of the Resec, which, whilst possible potentially for other brands to do, has really fitted with Chronoswiss's idea for the coloration of their watches. And this piece employs a blue DLC process to create a blue exterior which can resist abrasions from daily wear due to its ability to leach into the surface of the steel case itself, which is almost as resistant as a traditional black DLC coating. And whilst an acquired taste, it really was a pleasure to see the blue cases being assembled around their movements and dials, which give a truly different look, especially since even components such as the bars which go through the lugs are also coated this blue colour to really unify the look, and to give a look which is unique on the market. How do you see the audience for your watches changing, or is it a very continued group that comes to your watches?
I think it's a particular person who looks at our watches because he knows about handicrafts, he knows about what we develop, what we put into the watch. So it's definitely somebody one of a kind, I would call it. It's not, we're not a mass brand, of course. So people do already know what they're looking for. They want to have more know-how on all these little aspects that we put into our watches. So it's the same type of person that used to be our customer 30 years ago, but of course now we have a new generation. So, but the mindset, I would say, is similar. They want something different, and they're very interested in what we do and all these little details. Whereas with many other brands, you might not have so much detail focus as what we do with our dials, for example.
And speaking of your dials, actually, is a very interesting starting point. When you first interact with the watch, it's the first thing you come across. Do you think that your watches are more directed by design in terms of the design and development stage when you're coming out with a new watch? Are they more directed by what you want to achieve in terms of appearance and design, or do they start with the technical solution behind the dial? Because this resec setup is something which you don't see very often. So the concept behind it, the mechanical side to it, must play a significant role in terms of choosing what you can do with design.
The one doesn't go with the other. So you can have an incredible technical watch. If it doesn't look good, it wouldn't make me happy.
Yes.
And the opposite. You can have a great looking watch. If there's not some nice detail about the mechanics, it's also not as interesting, right? With us, it normally starts with the technique. So we come up with an idea and we say, well, that's a beautiful movement. How can we put a design around it which fits our ideas? So it's both, I think, and we put a lot of emphasis on both. I think an interesting resec design with the retrograde second, and now having this beautiful guilloche grey dial is a combination. It's a symbiosis, and that's what we're aiming at, to have a watch which not only from design point nice looking, but also technically speaking an interesting thing to talk about.
The concept of whether a watch makes you quote unquote happy is, I feel, central to why I like Chronoswiss so much. Whilst many luxury brands focus on a technical or even specification driven solution, such as silicon springs, new escapements or unique movements, all features which I'm very much in favour of, it must be said, I like the fact that Chronoswiss are keen to make watches that will simply bring a smile to the face. With extremely well prepared and spec'd ETA movements which are decorated and modified, this brand can give just as much time to the creation of a spectacular dial. The result is a watch which is accessible to a significant number of people, which offers the thrill and quality of more expensive watchmaking due to such a highly significant proportion of their parts being handmade, but using a more generic core. In short, these are superb tools to make you feel special due to their handmade nature and the fact that nothing else on the market really resembles them. And technically speaking, in terms of the movements, your brand is known for using movements which are not what has become a bit of a trend, the sort of in-house side of things. There is an in-house side to your watches. Mm-hmm. Do you view that as a sort of side aspect of your brand? Or do you simply feel that the movement is there to achieve the complication, so it's a practical element? Of course they're beautifully decorated, but is it more about achieving the complication which you're looking for, whether it's the retrograde seconds, the regulator setup, or...?
We produce our watches basically in a very classic way, the way the watch industry has been producing the last 200 years. So you have a lot of sub-suppliers, yes. And we're not a specialist in movements. No. So, and producing a nice movement, you know as well as I do, many have tried and not many have achieved. Yes. So we don't have the capacity to try out an own movement. Yes. And so for me the beauty is the face of the watch, so talking about the dial, talking about the handicrafts, and also the complication. Mm-hmm. So the complication, the mechanic complication which comes on top of the movement, I think that's the beauty of the watch. So and the movement is a complicated part, and you want to make sure that the movement is durable, is of high quality, etc. Yes. There are very good suppliers who can supply these. So we normally do the complication ourselves, or is our design. We design with the sub-suppliers. The regulator mostly is completely Chronoswiss design, and then the movement is an ETA, can be an any car, whatever. We have our own exclusive movements, that's what you mentioned, yes. Which is the C122, exactly. Which we use for 35 years now, which is also basically an old movement which yes. has already been in existence, but as we bought all these movements in the 80s, they are exclusive to Chronoswiss, and we have redeveloped them, etc. So this is an in-house movement, let's call it. Yes. But the bigger part of our watches is a mix of own complications and existing movements.
And how does the breakdown of costs with your watches vary? Is more of the emphasis placed when you're developing a watch and you have the funds to put into that? Is it more into the development of the mechanisms, more into the dial, or just the general research and development?
Good question again. very much depends on the watch. In general, I'd say it's somewhere around a quarter to these four different aspects you mentioned. Of course, the design part is a very time-consuming part, and very often you don't realize how much you spend on the design, even in your free time. You're with your head, you're in the design and you're drawing. The same for the team. So I think there's sometimes much more going into the design than what we all expect. And the handicrafted parts, of course, is a big part of the cost as well. And the others, 25, I'd say. Yeah.
Where care and detailing is concerned, the watches which come from this brand give something as honest as it is surprising. Their most recent style, the Flying Regulator, lifts the components of timekeeping, the seconds, minutes and hours, clean off the Guilloche dial created by hand by Mike Panzera, the mind behind these designs. Of course, I perhaps sound overwhelmingly positive about these watches, but the truth is that I have immense respect for a brand which pours such love into doing something different, and all whilst creating genuinely outstanding quality watches. The fact is that for the price, it's remarkable to see only a handful of watchmakers build by hand the entire production of this company, which enhances the feeling of just how special these watches are, in terms of being something personal and something just very different. And this is a question I've been meaning to ask, and I'm very curious to ask, is if money was no object, you didn't have to worry about the market, the price of development or any of that sort, what would be the ideal watch to create?
Tons of ideas. I think because this is my history now with the brand, it definitely should be a regulator.
That's your heritage within the brand.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing. If you do something, if you have heritage, you should continue with it. That's the beauty of it. So that's what I can say. And then, of course, it should be a nice Plicazur, Guilloche type of dial, where you see a lot of handicraft work in it. Yes. Complication-wise, maybe you add a chimney, which I think is a very useful complication, or a quarter repeater. Yes. That's something.
They're both interesting complications and interesting to hear, because I think a lot of brands jump towards the big names, the tourbillons and things, but actually I think that for the user there are some more interesting approaches.
Well, I don't want to judge on other people's thinking, but I'm very close to what you're saying. For me, a watch always needs also to be an instrument. And of course you can make a very precise instrument with a tourbillon, but the usefulness of an alarm clock, for example, is also very interesting.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking, and I hope that viewers enjoyed this in terms of delving a little bit deeper into Chronoswiss and understanding what is a brand which has changed over the years and is going towards very new designs and a very new way of thinking about watches and developing them. However, I'll conclude the video here, but I'd be very interested to hear what you think in the comments down below, as it's been a real pleasure for me to delve into this brand more closely. So thank you very much for watching, and do please like, share and subscribe to help the channel, and also to access more content here in future. This is Arm on the Watch Guy for watchchronicler.com. Out.